The Bible says that no one is good except God, and that every good gift comes from God. Goodness comes from God, and a good life comes from knowing Him and walking with Him. Not that life becomes easy or without problems, but it is filled with hopeful promises, peace through any storm, and abundant, undeserved grace. So, welcome to the good life, where life is far from perfect, but God is good. Come on. Good morning! We are going to be making some sourdough over the next couple days. I have been seeing some fun fall recipes come up on my Pinterest for sourdough, and I really like to try different recipes with sourdough as I'm learning. I feel like in my head I just want to try everything at least once. So we're going to try some fun pumpkin recipes. I went to the store this morning, stocked up on some pumpkin. And we're gonna make some different things with sourdough. I fed my starter last night. It had been in the fridge for a while, maybe 3, maybe 4 weeks, honestly. But it's looking pretty good. It didn't rise as much, I think, because the temperature is cooling down here. So I think it'll be good to go. Maybe it's not the strongest, but good enough. So let's make some sourdough. For the first recipe we're gonna try, and that is some pumpkin bagels. I made bagels one other time and they were a hit. My husband really liked them. It feels like a little bit extra work just with shaping them, but we will enjoy it. So we're gonna start with this recipe because it's seems pretty simple to put together. You mix it, let it rest, mix it again, and then let it rest for a good amount of time. And here's what you'll need for the bagels. I like to use a scale with all my recipes. It just seems really helpful and makes it easy. You need your starter, your flour of choice. I'm using the Kirkland brand organic all-purpose flour. Yep, you can help Mom when we get there. Pumpkin puree or real pumpkin if you're on top of it. And then salt, honey, and pumpkin pie spice, which I don't have, but I just have cinnamon, allspice, nutmeg, cloves. I'm pretty sure that's what you need, so I'll just guess and throw some of that together. And the recipe says to use a stand mixer for this, which I don't have, so I'm just doing it by hand. I did get this new dough whisk for my birthday. I'm super excited to try it out. I had bought some other ones but returned them because where the wire went in, it was all open, and I thought like dough's gonna get stuck in that little space up in there, and I don't want that. It's all sealed, it's silicone, so you can put it in the dishwasher, because I also knew that if I had one of these that was wood, I would not want to be hand washing all the dough off of it. So I'm excited to try this. So we're gonna start with our sourdough. We need 125 grams. And then 110 grams of water. Ooh, this is nice. I like this thing. 215 grams of the pumpkin puree, or 3/4 cup. This whisk is awesome. I love it. Next, we will add honey. It is 42 grams, or 2 tablespoons of honey. And then we're gonna add our dry ingredients. We're gonna add 550 grams of flour, which is about 3.5 cups. 12 grams of salt, and 1 teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. So I'm just gonna kind of guess on that. What do you guys use for your pumpkin pie spice? I just always guess and kind of wing it. I throw together cinnamon, ginger, allspice, cloves, and cardamom, whatever I'm feeling. And then just give it a mix until it forms a ball and all the flour is incorporated. I have become a little bit more confident in cooking and baking just over the last couple years. I don't know if confident is the right word, maybe lazy, but I don't always measure things perfectly to the T. With those pumpkin pie spices, for example, I just kind of throw it in, measure as best I can, and usually it works out just fine and tastes good. And since I am not using a stand mixer, I am just going to be kneading the dough a tiny bit, since I'm doing this by hand instead. And the last time I made bagels, you had to knead the dough for several minutes, so I think this can just transfer over to this recipe. We got our dough ball here. I'm going to cover it with plastic wrap and let it sit for an hour. While that is resting, we're going to start making the dough for this one. This one just looked amazing. Sweet sourdough pumpkin bread with cinnamon and pecan. And here's what you'll need for this recipe. You need your sourdough starter, your flour, pumpkin puree, maple syrup, salt, water, and then turmeric. I think this gives it some color. We're not adding in pumpkin pie spice because there is a filling to this. So this is just the base of the dough, and then we'll add the filling. And actually, I missed it. It does call for a pinch of cinnamon. For this one, you will need 100 grams of starter. Okay, I went a little overboard, but I'm usually willing to go overboard with the starter. I don't know how that affects it perfectly, but 200 grams of pumpkin, 180 grams of water, and give it a mix. 30 grams of maple syrup, 500 grams of flour. Don't forget to tare, everybody. That's the button that clears the measurements so you can add the new ingredient to measure. Why? Mommy has definitely forgotten to do it before and messes me up. 10 grams of salt, and then a pinch of turmeric and a pinch of cinnamon. Oops. And here we are mixing together the dough. I feel like that is what I'm doing most of this video. Hopefully you guys don't get bored of looking at dough, but I've been loving this whisk. I'm so grateful my mom got it for me for my birthday. I did request it from her. I'd been looking up some. This one seemed like the best. I haven't used it for other things, but I think it'll work great for any batter and other types of dough. And you will want to knead with your hands until it forms into a ball. And here's our dough, and this one is gonna rest for 45 minutes. And while I was putting this dough together, it just made me think how grateful I am to be able to mix that dough with my hands. I've been going through healing in my skin for almost 2 years now, from rashes that I've had caused by a steroid cream withdrawal. And for months and months and months, my fingers were covered with blisters and open wounds, oozing, painful, and I had them wrapped up in different types of wraps and bandages, and I wore gloves to do the most simple things like washing my daughter's hands, preparing food, cutting up vegetables. I wore gloves for everything, and so my skin is healing, and I'm just so thankful for being able to just put my hands in the dough like that and mix it up. And the rest of my starter, I have just a little bit left. I'm just gonna put a cover on, put it back in the fridge. I actually have 2 bottles of starter, or 2 jars of starter that I like to keep in the fridge just because, I don't know, I'm always nervous about something happening to one of them. But I will just put this in the fridge, and then the next time I wanna use it, I'll take it out, feed it, and it should be good to go. So here's my bagel dough. It has been a couple hours actually. So what I'm gonna do is just shape the dough one more time, and then it is good to go. It's gonna rest for 8 to 12 hours. That'll be the bulk fermentation phase. And so the dough will be ready at about 10 p.m. tonight when I'm ready to go to bed. So instead of cooking the bagels tonight and shaping them, I'm gonna do that in the morning. I'm just gonna throw the dough in the fridge for the rest of the night. And I feel like for me, that's what makes sourdough a little bit flexible, is that if the timeline isn't matching up between the recipe and what's practical for me, I'll either leave the dough out on the counter if it hasn't had a long fermentation period, or if it already has had that long fermentation, I'll just put it in the fridge. And usually the dough is good for a couple hours, overnight, an extra day. So I know sourdough can be very specific, but for me, I'm just looking for something that's good enough. I'm not going for perfection. And I find that sourdough is a little bit flexible. And I'm also gonna knead this dough just a little bit, because the last time I made bagels, I had to knead the dough quite a bit. So I don't know. I'm just gonna knead it for a few minutes, shape it, and then let it rest. And here's the bread dough, which I haven't touched for a couple hours. I probably should have, but things just got busy. So I'm just gonna perform a stretch and fold. And I'm gonna be doing a set of stretch and folds on this dough for the next couple hours. And I'll probably just do them whenever I'm free, basically. And I believe after this stretch and fold, I'm supposed to add the filling to the bread and then continue doing the stretch and fold. So now I'll let this sit for about 30 minutes. In my opinion, the recipe for this bread is very, very complicated, which I feel like some sourdough recipes can be really complicated or really simple. And I kind of lean into taking the simple route, because for me, sometimes I get great results with doing more minimal work. And for me, that's what I'm going for. I'm not trying to make it perfect. I just want something that's good enough. This recipe calls for stretch and folds, where you take out the dough and put it onto a wet countertop, do the stretch and folds, and then go back to your bowl, make sure every little bit is scraped out, get the bowl wet, and then put that dough back in the wet bowl, and then do that again and again and again and again for your stretch and folds. And I'm just not willing to do that, and I don't want to do that, and I feel like it's unnecessary. I could be wrong, because I'm not an expert, but I'm just gonna go with what I've done in the past, just doing stretch and folds in the bowl whenever I'm available, whenever I have time over the next couple hours. And then I'll let it sit out on my counter for the rest of the day, and I'll put it in the fridge at nighttime. So I'll basically do that for both of these doughs. When I first started looking at sourdough recipes, I was very overwhelmed by how long they were, how much time it seemed like they took, and all the detailed steps. But someone who helped me get started on sourdough, she gave me a very simple recipe to make my first loaf. It turned out amazing with simple steps, and that really encouraged me to believe that, you know, maybe I can do it. And once you learn kind of the basic steps of sourdough, I feel like then you can make these recipes adaptable to your own day, your own schedule, what you have going on. Here's what you need for the filling. You need some brown sugar, more pumpkin puree, chopped pecan, flour, a touch of cinnamon, and a touch of nutmeg. I think that's what the recipe says, actually. And then I'm gonna use my scale again for this, because it has everything measured out in grams. So going in is 50 grams of pumpkin puree, 100 grams of brown sugar, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, a pinch of nutmeg, 15 grams of flour. I'm gonna mix that together. And then add in 60 grams of chopped pecans. Yep, you can have one. Let's see how much 60 grams is. Okay, it seemed like about a third of a cup. I'm gonna put in a few more just because why not? Clean my countertop here. And I'm going to lay the dough out. Actually, all right, flour down first. Try to get all the last little bits. I'm just gonna spread this out into a rectangle. I made adaptations on almost all these recipes, simplified them to my own convenience, and they turned out really great, even with a few unintentional mistakes that I also made, because sometimes I don't pay enough attention to the recipe. I definitely make mistakes and forget things, but they all turned out really great. So just be encouraged to try new recipes. You can do it even if it's not perfect. It'll taste great. So I did the best I could getting that all even, and then I'm just gonna fold it together. Yes, baby, I'll get you, honey. And the recipe said that it's okay if it kind of starts falling apart, but hopefully. I'm just gonna work the dough a little bit. This is my first time doing an inclusion loaf where you are adding a filling inside the dough. So I have no idea if what I did here is correct. My filling got all over the outside. It was kind of goopy, but again, it tasted great. And I'm just gonna plop this back in my bowl. And here she is, and now she's just gonna sit for about 30 minutes and I'll do another stretch and fold. And I'm just keeping it right in here and doing normal stretch and folds. These are called stretch and folds, where you're pulling up on one side of the dough and then laying it across the dough. You rotate your bowl about 90 degrees, do it again on all 4 sides. These help the dough to keep its shape and then also create those air pockets that you see when you cut into a sourdough loaf. And then I am going to pre-shape the dough, which is what you do before you're quite ready to bake it, but you put it into kind of a ball. You create some tension on the outside, and then you do one final resting period before you bake it. These are some of the basic routines of sourdough that happen in the middle and then leading up to the end where you are baking your loaf. So I'm getting ready to do that now. I'm putting parchment paper in this bowl. I'm gonna put my dough in here, and then I use the parchment paper when I'm ready to just lift it out and place it right into my hot Dutch oven. I'm gonna cover it up probably and let it sit on my counter until I go to bed, and I'll put it in the fridge for the rest of the night. Well, good morning. I have my bagel dough here. I just took it out of the fridge about 10 minutes ago. And then I have a pot of water I'm bringing up to boil. We're gonna boil our bagels once I shape them. And then I have my oven preheating to 425 degrees. So I'm gonna take the dough out and cut it into 8 sections and start shaping the bagels. Here I'm just using my bench scraper here, which I love using. I got this from my mom, who got it from my aunt, and I probably wouldn't have bought this for myself, but I love using it. And to shape the bagels, you are going to flatten them out into a rectangle, and then you're gonna make little balls by folding in all the sides. I'm making the bagels, Abigail. Okay, and then you're just going to roll it into a ball. You wanna help me? Yeah. Okay. I'll help you. And then set these on a piece of parchment paper. I'll do it. I'll help. Isn't that so sweet? I love hearing my daughter say that. I'll help. It's just the most beautiful, precious little phrase, and I hope I never take that for granted. I like to do things in a rush a lot of times, trying to go as fast as I can, but most of the time, maybe 7 or 8 times out of 10, if I am leaving the room to go do a task, my daughter will drop what she's doing to be with me, whether I'm going down to the basement to bring one item back up or go to another room to fold a little bit of laundry and put it away. My daughter loves to be by my side, to do chores right along with me. Even the simple tasks can be so big and meaningful for your toddler, so it's a good reminder for me to slow down and enjoy it. Now we're gonna let these sit for 15 minutes. It's time to form the bagels. So you're just gonna basically poke your thumb in the middle and make a hole. And you want to make the hole a little bit bigger than you think, because they will close up again a little bit more as you boil them and bake them. So you're gonna make them pretty big like that. Even as you set them down, they kind of close in again. And then after you do all of these, you're gonna let them sit for 15 more minutes. So I just try to do my best. Like any other person, I lose my patience and feel frustrated, especially when I have a big to-do list. But my husband always reminds me, he says, Elise, the most important thing for you to do each and every day is to raise our girls. Everything else has to come second, and that's such a good reminder to me. All right, our water is boiling. To the water, you're gonna add 1 tablespoon. You're gonna add 1 tablespoon of baking soda. Whoa. And 1 tablespoon of sugar. then you're gonna put 2 to 3 bagels in the boiling water, and you're gonna boil them 1 minute on each side. So let's see. Come on, buddies. All right, mine sink. What does that mean? Are they coming back up? I think they're supposed to float. You can definitely fit 3 in here. There, one came up. Look at that one came up. All right, we'll give it a minute here. So back to my thoughts. Everything in life I feel like is a balance. So some days, I mean, you have responsibilities to take care of. Maybe you have people coming over. You need to get certain tasks done. And it's okay for you to be busy as a mom around the house and for your kids to see that you're busy and you're working hard for the family and putting in time and effort. That's a good thing. But it's also important and just priceless to find those moments where you're just sitting on the floor with your kids, looking them in the eye, making them laugh, laughing together, just having fun. So everything in life, it's a balance. But anyway, here we are making these bagels. I feel like I don't know how to say bagel correctly. I'm from Minnesota, so I think we say it a little funny. Bagel, bagel. But when I'm hearing myself say bagel in these clips, I'm like, wow, I'm probably saying it wrong. So how do you guys say bagel? How are Minnesotans supposed to say bagel? I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Here's how they look before going into the oven. They just look a little bit soft and wet and soggy. So these will go in the oven, 425 for 22 minutes. Our house smells amazing. And they look pretty good. Here they are, fresh out of the oven. They have definitely some crispiness to them. That's what boiling them ahead of time does. So they look really delicious. They look pretty good. Some look a little better than others, but they're crispy on the top and the bottom. There's a nice crisp on the bottom too. So I think we're gonna cut into one. It's too hard to wait. You like them? They're amazing. 10 out of 10, highly recommend. Next, I have my sweet pumpkin loaf that I pulled out of the fridge about 15 minutes ago. My oven just beeped at me. My Dutch oven here that I preheated in the oven. The oven is at 450 degrees, so it is very hot. And then I just take this parchment paper and pull it right out and put it in. Hear a little sizzle. It's gonna stay in the oven with the cover on for 35 minutes at 450 degrees. After my timer goes off, I'm gonna remove the cover, put the loaf back in, and cook it for 20 to 30 more minutes. And you're looking for a golden crust on the top of the loaf. And then you can also check the temperature inside. It should be between 190 and 200 degrees to be fully cooked. It got a little dark. I actually kept it in for about 15 minutes instead of 20 to 30 because it looked dark when I took the lid off. So anyway, there it is. I also forgot to score it, which normally I'm not too fancy about scoring anyway. I don't actually have a razor. I just use a knife or scissors. So my loaves usually don't look fancy, but I definitely forgot to score it. So we'll give this about an hour and then we'll cut into it, and hopefully it still tastes really good. I'm sure it will. Just a little crispy on the top. Let's cut into it. Let's see. The bottom definitely got very dark. Look at that. Let's see. Hey. All right, now that looks just like the picture. Yeah. So I think it'll taste really good. I wonder if it got dark because there is some sugar on it and it kind of caramelized. That definitely looks just like the picture. Oh my goodness. I mean, pretty amazing, right? Really good. The burnt bottom, not so good. Everything else, really good. All right, I'm picking up my sourdough again. It has been about a week, and I've been having a few issues with my starter that I wanted to show you. So I had some starter in my fridge that was in there for maybe over a month. And I fed it yesterday. It finally doubled in size, but it took about 24 hours for it to double in size. So I was a little bit nervous, but I just kept waiting, and eventually it did double, but it took a long time. So I read online that if your starter is rising so slowly like this, especially after it's already an established starter, that you can take out just a little bit of it, 25 grams of starter, feed it with 50 grams of flour, 50 grams of water, and using just a small amount might help it to eat up the food better than if it's such a large amount. That's what I watched the video on. So we're gonna do this experiment and see if it works. 25 grams, just a little bit. And then you're gonna do double the amount. So instead of doing a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio, you're gonna do a 1-to-2-to-2 ratio. So double the amount of flour and water. Grow, grow, grow. So we'll see if this can bring my starter back to life by giving it just a little extra boost. My starter is back. It doubled in size. So I realized my mistake. I had been doing this the last couple times I was feeding it. I was screwing the lid on too tight, which I should have known better, but that's why it wasn't doubling in size fast enough. I don't know what I was thinking. After feeding it, I just screwed the lid on a little bit, and I should have given it more air to breathe. So last night I fed it the 50 grams flour, 50 grams water. It wasn't rising after like 3 hours. I was like, what? Why is it not working? And then I opened the jar and realized like, oh, there's some moisture inside here. Why is there so much moisture in here? And then it hit me that I had been screwing the lid on too tight the last couple times feeding it. So anyway, so that method that I did last night, it might have helped, you know, activate it, but I doubt it. I think I just was not leaving enough opening with the lid. So anyway, praise the Lord, my starter's back. I'm really happy. I was a little bit sad, so silly mistake, but now I'm good to go and I'll know it for the future. All right, we are back in the kitchen to try another pumpkin recipe. This time we're making pumpkin sourdough dinner rolls, which I've never made dinner rolls before, so it will be a first. They look super delicious, and I'm just so happy and thankful to be back using my sourdough starter again. I was missing it and just struggling over the last couple days trying to get it back in action. So I'm very thankful I found my mistake moving forward. So let's go ahead and make these. You mix the ingredients together in a bowl, and then it involves a lot of kneading. So if you are using a stand mixer and a dough hook, it's 8 minutes of kneading. Otherwise, if you're doing it by hand, which is me, it's 12 minutes of kneading. So this is a lot. We'll see if I do the full 12 minutes. But then after that, you just let the dough ferment. You do a ferment out on the countertop, covered up, and then optional one, which I always like to do, is putting it in the fridge to do another ferment. So I'll do that overnight tonight. Look at all those bubbles. Looking good, looking good. All right, to the bowl, we're gonna add 1/2 cup of sourdough starter, 1/3 cup milk. Mix that together. 3 tablespoons of brown sugar, and 1 cup of pumpkin puree. 1 egg. 1 teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. I'm just throwing in the spices that I have. Cinnamon, a little ginger, allspice, nutmeg, and cardamom. Four and a half cups of flour. And give it a mix. Gonna go in with my hands now, as the dough is getting a little bit harder to mix with this. Just gonna roll this all out and begin kneading. We'll see how much I can do here. I see Mama's kneading the bread. No, don't touch, baby. No touch, honey. 4 more minutes. Alright, I'm definitely sweating, but I did it for 12 minutes according to my clock, so I'm just gonna put this in a clean bowl, cover it, and let it sit out until I'm ready to go to bed, and then put it in the fridge. And all the hard work is done. Thankfully, that's the nice thing about sourdough. Sometimes it takes a lot of time, you know, it takes maybe a day and a half, but doing all the work right up front, and then you're just waiting basically, and then at that very end, you're just shaping them into the buns and then letting them rise and baking them. So we got the hard part done, now we're just waiting. Until this has about doubled in size. Just make sure it rises enough before you put it in the fridge. Good morning, here's our dough out of the fridge the next day in the morning. And now we're just gonna shape these into the buns and let them rise about 3 hours and then bake them. All right, you guys, I was so thankful and grateful that my sourdough came back to life, all because of a silly little error I was making in the back of my mind. For the last several days, I was thinking, oh, what's wrong with my starter? What's wrong with my starter? And just like low-key a little stressed. So I was so happy to see it come back to life. And then to shape them, you're gonna do a similar technique as the bagels. So you're gonna get them in a ball. Well, maybe not get them in a ball, but you're gonna fold the dough in on itself. And then just not poke a hole in it. Pinch any seams together. And then put these seam side down in the pan to rise. It looks okay. It's okay. It could be better. Man, my theory with sourdough, I feel like my running punchline is always, it's good enough. And yeah, my sourdough is never perfect, but it tastes good. 9 times out of 10, probably 10 times out of 10, it tastes good. So I feel like I'm just always saying it's good enough. But back to my bagels, there is a problem that they didn't float when I first put them in water. Apparently they're supposed to. I think the last 2 times I made them, they didn't float both times. So let's quick look up why that happened. All right, Google says, actually the AI overview says, do I need to worry about copyright? If I can read this verbatim, I don't know. It says, if your sourdough bagels didn't float in water, it most likely means your dough is too dense, which could be caused by not allowing enough time for fermentation, using a flour with low gluten content, or not developing enough gluten during mixing, resulting in a lack of air pockets needed for the dough to rise and float properly. So maybe I need to maybe I need to proof my bagels. Here's our 12 buns. There are 12 of them, Abigail. We're gonna cover them and let them rise for 3 hours, and hopefully they get a good rise. I'm a little nervous about it. Have a good rise, little buddies. Yeah? I know. Alright, and here's the rise on those rolls. It looks really good. I'm really happy with how they rose. I have 1 tablespoon of melted butter and 1 tablespoon of honey. I'm gonna brush about half of this onto all the rolls. Bake them at 375 for 25 to 30 minutes. And then when they're finished baking, you're gonna brush the rest of this on top. I feel like there will be none left afterwards, so if I use it all up now, I might just do that, but we'll see. We served these rolls with some family this evening, and my husband's grandma especially loved these rolls and was asking about them, and that just made me so happy. All right, they look amazing. This is after 25 minutes in the oven, and I did take the temperature, and they were all about right at 200 degrees, so they look good. I'm gonna melt another tablespoon of butter, mix it with honey, and then put those on top as well. I used up all of what I had mixed up, most all of it before, so I'll just mix up another batch. Just beautiful. We have some people coming over, so I'll have to try these later. Good morning, it is another day. We're gonna make another sourdough recipe today. Today we're gonna make pumpkin cinnamon rolls, which I'm very excited about. We love cinnamon rolls in this house. I've made them several times, and it's such a treat. They always get eaten pretty quickly. So we're gonna make some cinnamon rolls, and let me show you what we need. 1/2 cup of sourdough starter. I'm just guessing and probably putting a little bit extra in there because that's how I like it. Half a cup of water. Good job. You're gonna mix this a little bit. No, that's all. You poured it all in. And then half a cup of pumpkin puree.
What kind of white milk?
It's kind of like milk. And 1/3 cup of honey. And basically put all this in, I think. Yep, hold it good. Good job. And half a cup of melted coconut oil. I'm thinking you could use butter for that, but I'm just going with what the recipe says. 4 cups of flour. Okay, go ahead, honey. Pour that one in, hold it up so it doesn't touch what's inside. Good job. 2. And then mix together, and you will need to probably use your hands to just knead this a little bit so the dough comes all together. Let's mix it. Ooh! Now we're gonna just use our hands to get this all together in a ball. And we're gonna knead it a little bit. I have our ball of dough here. I did knead it just for about 3 minutes just to get the dough to come together and form a ball. So now this is gonna ferment on the counter. I'm gonna cover it for 8 to 12 hours. So it is currently 10 a.m. So it's gonna sit on my counter all day until bedtime. And then the part that I'm a little nervous about is there are a couple other ingredients for the dough that it says to add after you do the long ferment before you're gonna bake it. You're gonna add egg, vanilla, pumpkin pie spice, cinnamon, baking powder, baking soda, and salt. And then add those ingredients in using a stand mixer and a dough hook attachment, which I don't have, so I'm a little nervous about that. I tried doing this with banana bread one time, like adding in the egg and the milk after it had fermented. And it didn't work so well. There were like clumps of dough that just didn't get blended out, so I'm a little nervous, but I'm just gonna try it. It'll still probably taste good even if the dough isn't perfect. So I'm gonna let this sit covered for probably 10 hours, and you want it to about double in size. And then I think tonight I'm gonna add those extra ingredients and then put this in the fridge until the morning when I'm ready to bake them. And to update on the dinner rolls, the pumpkin dinner rolls I made the other night, they were definitely good. They all got eaten, and it was really good, especially with that melted butter and honey that I brushed on top after they were done cooking. It was a little more dense and dry of a bread consistency, so I might not make that exact recipe again, but it was good for something different, especially with some butter on it. They were really good. So. And now it is evening time. I just checked on my dough. I did a little poke, and I actually didn't know what exactly this meant, but I just looked up the poke test, and it's a technique used to determine if your bread is ready, if it's been proved for too long or too little. So if you push your finger against the dough and it springs back quickly, it means that the dough needs more time to prove. If it springs back slowly, that means it's ready to bake. And if it doesn't spring back, which haha, that was mine, it means that dough is overproofed and should be baked immediately. Oh no. So it looks like my dough is overproofed. You can still see that little fingerprint mark there. You know, it's good enough. I do my best, but still learning. Anyway, I'm adding those extra ingredients. You just saw what they were. I forget already. And yes, had a lot of fun using my hand to mix it all in. I thought, well, this is going to be the only way to get it incorporated is with my hand. But actually, it wasn't that difficult. And it seemed like it came together well, and the bake was fine as well. So I was nervous about this part because I had done it with another recipe and it didn't work out well, but it turned out great. And I was happy to get to wash my hands after this. So here I'm just saying, well, we'll see how it turns out. Good night. Good morning, it's the next day. Let's put these cinnamon rolls together. So first I'm gonna start on the filling. I have 1/3 cup of softened melted butter in there. And then you need 1/3 cup of pumpkin puree. I'm just using what I have left. I have like almost a third of a cup, but it'll be good enough. 1 cup of packed brown sugar. Just kind of eyeballing it. A pinch of salt. 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. And then 1 tablespoon pumpkin pie spice. So I just have my usual suspects of spices here. Gonna add a little bit more cinnamon. And mix it all together. Alright, I got my dough here. Looks about the same as last night. I was a little bit nervous, but it'll be fine. It will be fine. And I'm gonna grab some flour. It says to just roll out the dough into a big rectangle. Alright, it's kind of in a circle when you need it to be rectangle. And then we're just gonna spread the filling over it. Guys, these cinnamon rolls were the best ever. They were better than any other cinnamon rolls I've ever made. I haven't made them again since, but I'd love to. They were so good with this pumpkin filling, and then I forget what was in the icing, but something special as well. And then normally you roll this up. You can use a bench scraper to help push the dough and roll it up as tight as you can. I've seen that people take a pizza cutter and slice all their cinnamon rolls first and then roll them up. I might try that with a knife just to see how it works. It makes them look a little prettier, but I'm not sure if it's gonna be worth it. Pretty good. All right, I think I'm gonna try that again. Yeah?
Wait, you got it really beady.
Then it's really pretty. Yeah, it's prettier than how I did it the other way. It was my first time trying this new method, and I don't know, it was okay. It wasn't life-changing at all. I think I'll probably just cut it once they are all rolled up with a bench scraper next time. You'll see what they look like. They look okay. Could be better. All right, they look good. A little bit messy. I didn't perfectly divide out the dough, so I made these guys just a little bit smaller to fit them all in the pan. I think I like that method though of cutting them and rolling them up, although mine definitely don't look as pretty as when people do it online, but that's okay. It'll taste delicious. This is what some people's cinnamon rolls look like, you guys. I just have not perfected it to this level yet, although I did read a tip that you can use dental floss to cut through a roll when you're making the cinnamon roll. I always thought that sounded a little bit weird to use dental floss to cut through the dough, but maybe it's worth a try. I have a little bit extra of the filling that is on the countertop just from cutting them and rolling them. I'm gonna scrape it off and just put it on top for some extra. And then the rolls are gonna rise for 30 to 60 minutes. I'll probably go at least 60 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. It's been almost an hour and I forgot one step. The recipe calls for some heavy cream that you pour over the cinnamon rolls, kind of in between them. And you're supposed to do this before you let them rest. So I'm just gonna do it now while I'm waiting for the oven to preheat. I did this one time with cinnamon rolls and it was really delicious. Then we'll bake these at 350 for 30 to 40 minutes. Moving on to the frosting, the recipe calls for 6 ounces of butter, which is a stick and a half, and 6 ounces of cream cheese. I just threw the whole block in. 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Go ahead. A half a tablespoon of vanilla extract. And a 1/4 cup of maple syrup. 3/4 cup of powdered sugar. Because you could probably use a mixer for this, but I'm just going by hand. I'm just gonna go in with my hand mixer just to get it all nice and smooth. And tastes good, and we're just waiting 2 more minutes for those cinnamon rolls to be done in the oven. All right, they look amazing. I'm just gonna check the temperature of them to make sure they're cooked. And I probably won't be able to wait too long to try one. Look amazing. Just Delicious, you guys. The cinnamon rolls were amazing. I'm trying to not go back and keep eating little bites. Perfectly soft in the middle and on the bottom, and then crunchy on the outside. The filling was amazing. Frosting was good. Do you guys like cream cheese frosting, or do you like the icing on top of cinnamon rolls? I definitely like both. But thank you for coming along and making these fun sourdough recipes. It was fun to try them, and of course to get to enjoy a delicious treat afterwards. It's always worth it. It was a lot of fun, and we'll see you next time. Bye. You are a real trooper if you stuck around to the very end. Thank you so much for being here and for making some sourdough with me. I had so much fun trying new recipes for the fall time, even though by the time this video goes up, it is basically winter time. But my favorite recipe were these cinnamon rolls. I wish I could have cinnamon rolls all the time in my fridge for a treat. Thank you for being here. See you next time. Bye.